Welcome back to another episode of Lure Up. It's good to have you here today. I'm Todd McAllister, and welcome back to another episode of Lure Up. Today's episode, we're going to build what's called a spin jig. This is one of my favorite lures, and this is a very simple lure. Anyone can build this. All you guys who contact me and talk about, I'm just getting started, or how can I do lures better, whatever, this is a great lure to build because it's so versatile. The thing I love about it is you can fish deep with it. I fish deep often for hybrid stripers, smallmouth, walleye, whatever. And when I'm fishing deep, I like to be able to get some feedback. So these little spin jigs, they're made with a little blade at the tail. And so when you're doing the lift drop or slow rolling, whatever, you get a feedback that action's working properly. And I love that. Kind of like fishing a crankbait, but you're fishing 30 foot deep if you want to. And you're fishing with little bitty baits. So this spin jig we're going to build two of them. We're going to build one that's about 3/4 of an inch long, and then we're going to build one that's almost 2 inches long. So stay tuned. I think we're going to catch some fish with this one. I'm not making any promises, but we're going to try. So stay tuned. Okay, here's those hooks I was talking about. So I'm going to start with this little hook and a number 5 split shot. But the key to crimping them things on there straight is getting them in your pliers straight. I'm going to catch just that bottom corner like that. See how I'm catching that? And what that'll do is that'll put my hook up further on the back of the bait. Now the bottom, those ears, I'm going to take another pair of pliers, roll them in, and then take a hammer and tap them down. I think it's something about like this. And I take my little pencil and just use it to kind of add a little extra Bondo around in there. And then I take some of the micro balloons and a brush, apply those micro balloons to that wet Bondo, and that gives me the ability to kind of shape it a little bit smoother. It just saves on sanding. Okay, the reason I use this Lexan piece here to build this on is because it's got a very lubricious peel-off surface to it. And I can just, break that Bondo loose once it sets up and start carving. Okay, go ahead and add another coat of Bondo to the other side. And while I'm doing that, I realize, you know what, I'm going to make a bigger one, just a little bit bigger. While I'm making this one, I'll do two at the same time. That way I'll be able to, match the hatch on two different generations. And I do the same things I did with the other one. Take a little micro balloons and coat it. Kind of take the brush and actually shape it. Okay, getting broke loose, and then mix up some more Bondo and fill that body shape in enough where I can just sand and carve it down to the shape I want. You guys out there who get a little frustrated trying to carve some of these woods, I really recommend trying this Bondo. It is so easy to carve, especially at that early state when it's not completely cured. The one thing I do want to stress, though, is it's kind of stinky. So I'm set up right next to a window with a little exhaust fan running, and I pull them fumes right out so I don't really smell it too bad. But here again, my sinuses they're scarred up like Rambo's back. Once I start carving, I realize there's a few little air pockets and places that need to be filled. Okay, let's put some details in. I'm talking about a gill plate. We'll see right in there. Right in there. Alright, let's do an eye socket. Uh-oh, I've got company. Make him a nice little turn down mouth. And then I take the Dremel tool, and that Bondo is easy to work with, so I take that Dremel tool and work in those eye sockets. And it does take a little practice to get good at that. You can see me using my fingers there to brace the part and the tool so I don't go wandering off and create some egg-shaped hole. But that Bondo is pretty easy to work with. What size? I think it's the size right here in the little guy. Yep, that's it. It's a good size for him. For a little buster. This guy probably next size up. Yep. I think that'll do it. I like it. And like I say here, I don't want a whole lot of depth on these. I just want a little bit of detail. You know what? On this one, it's a little bit bigger. We got room for more details. I think we should put a little nostril right there. That I've collected over the years. The problem with these are they got a welded split ring on it. So what I'm thinking about doing is I'm going to cut this off, like say cut this eyelet off. The question is, do we want them in the mold? So I think what I've decided is we're going to go ahead and glue these in to these lures, and we'll just cast them right in there. I don't see any reason not to. I'll just have to be careful not to get resin down in that bearing, so I'll saturate that good with Vaseline at this end. But yeah, I think that's what we'll do. Let's put a little glue on there. Got me a couple pieces of plywood here, 1/2 inch. And I'm going to put both these rascals on here and mold both of them at the same time. Let's do something like that. Yeah, take my 3/8 inch diameter drill bit, pop some holes in there, and then whip him out on the old jigsaw table. I love this thing. I can cut my models out. I can cut my mold frames out. It's just so handy. Then when I get done here, I stack the two pieces together, and that way I can match both sides. Okay, let's bed these rascals in some clay. Put them to sleep. Bed them down for the mold. Oh, yeah. It's always a good idea to nuke your clay in the microwave a little bit, make it softer. You don't want it too soft, but if it's too hard, you won't get it filled in good and tight. And you want it to be really, you want to fill every little crevice good. So what I do here is I take a pencil and mark the outline of the profile and a razor knife and remove some of that material, because when I push that down, I want it to be halfway without distorting and pushing a bunch of clay out. And here I've made me a sculpting tool out of a popsicle stick. I just basically cut it almost square
and then file it down real good and smooth. And I use some Vaseline and a little bit of modeling clay to fill any voids, and of course I use the popsicle stick to take down the high spots. The idea here is to make a nice, flat, clean parting line so that when your rubber's poured, you'll have a good parting line on your actual part when you take it out.
Take a brush and just clean those edges good. Tiny little imperfection right there in that gill cheek. And I'm trying to put some clay in it. And it calls for 3 parts of the blue to every 100 parts of the red.
And then I like taking a brush and brushing around on it. What this does is ensure that the bubbles, well, it doesn't ensure that you won't get any bubbles, but it sure helps. I'm brushing it down into that, making sure I'm not distorting the clay, but I'm also kind of making sure it's down the parting line. And if there's any bubbles in there, I try to break them. Maybe got too much in there, but this is a pretty small mold and it's pretty simple. And this stuff to clean up, you can clean this out of this brush with some Dawn dishwashing liquid, which I will go do here in a minute.
Alright, let's let that dry. A little light on the subject. Let's see what we got here. Alright, there again, I like to push on the clay so I don't pull it out of the rubber. There we go. Looking good. Now see how you can't see the hooks? They're completely concealed in rubber. That's a good thing, because what I can do is cut this rubber off over top of the hook by going like that. Now, if I've got weight on the hook, when I stick it in there, it'll lock into that rubber, and that's what you want.
Now the blue tape you see here, I just put it on the one side there so that it spaces the frame apart. So when I clamp this thing together, screw it together, and then pour the other half, I can open it up, take the tape out, and now when I shut it, that extra space in there collapses and puts pressure on the rubber parting line, so I get a good seal. On a more complex mold, I would take the time to brush this out in a very thin coat and let it sit for a minute. And that way, that thin layer is going to release those bubbles really, really easier than if I were to have just a straight pour. You know, it ends up trapping the rubber or the bubbles in there. You can take a heat gun and heat this up a little bit, and it will cure faster.
Okay, I went out there and cleaned him all up so all everything's flush. And then I had some old netting out there that was like it was a storage bag for something that you could, had netting you could see into it. And I cut a little piece of it and glued it on here to make what they call a living hinge. There's no pin or anything. It's just a flexibility. So it just makes it more convenient. You don't have to put a hinge on there, but some resin on this side. And I guess this is a little bit of a experiential thing, where I've poured several times where I didn't have enough resin in one side and I get a little air bubble or whatever. So there is a little bit of art to this, knowing there's, you always want to err on the side of too much, but you don't want way too much. So here I can tell I got, I'm bulging there and I'm bulging here. That's not necessary. So I'll take some out. See how that disappears? That little dimple I made just goes right back to the resin. Well, that just means it's not ready to close yet. So I just kind of keep an eye on it, and when it starts where I go like that and it sticks up for a little bit, I know it's thick enough where I can
close the mold and it won't come flying out, you know. And that's another reason I add a little flotation in there. It gives you that little bit of body so that while you're closing the mold you don't end up with spillage. Now something I'll do when I've got like a cavity here that I don't want to fill up, like I don't want that to fill up and I don't want that to fill up, I'll take me a little bit of modeling clay or another one of the parts, the actual parts, and I'll make it scrap and I'll just set it in there. But in a situation like this, I'll try to put some modeling clay in there. It'll stick to the rubber. Okay. Yeah, I think it's good enough. That's another thing too, when I pull my part out like that, if it doesn't fill in, I know that's getting pretty close too. So, and I want to close this end first, and the reason I want to do that is it's pushing the resin that way, away from the bearing. And if I find out, like for instance, I've had parts where the bearings fill up and I can't seem to keep them clean, well, I'll just put a plug in there and then glue the bearing into it, you know, the swivel. So, all right, we'll let that set for a few minutes and do another round, and we'll have us some parts, some lures. All right, let's see what we got here. Yes. Now see, there's flashing there, but that flashing's so thin. It's just like paper thin, you know, it just breaks right off. It's not a big deal. Well, I went and tested these in the water, and this one swims great. This one doesn't swim at all. And I got to thinking about it, and what's going on is this is so heavy. When it's in the water, it's overcoming the, I guess you'd say, the uprightedness of the jig. So I want to switch this out to a smaller blade and try that and see if that works. Oh yeah, got it figured out. That's all it needed, was just a little more weight. So I upped the weight on the jig hook, and check this out. Look at that old bad boy. I don't know if you can see that. It's shimmying and shaking. Real nice. You watch that top hook, you can just see it vibrating. Yeah, that's gonna be sweet. Them crappies and them small white bass and hybrids, they'll eat that up, I think. Let's go find out. Let's get this thing painted up. Oh, we gotta see the bigger one too. Here's the bigger one. Man, that looks good. You'll not be able to do lift drop. The old spin jig. Love it. Alright. Let's go get these bad boys painted up. This paint job, I'm going to call this Paradise. I love this paint job. I haven't done it in a little while, but it's to me one of my favorite paint jobs. It's really a good looking paint job. I call it Paradise. Take a little Caribbean blue. The next one is magenta fluorescent. Now I just basically paint the nose and the top of the head, and then I put a little cast on the belly and down the sides where it just pinkens up the flesh a little bit. So trying to leave a little band of white in the middle and just let it fade to pink on the belly. But where I put it on the nose and the head, that turns it to purple on the head and of course pink at the nose. Next I take me some chartreuse, and here I'm just trying to capture that bottom edge of blue, and it leaves a little bit of chartreuse and it turns that blue to green. So you're going chartreuse, green, blue, and then of course that purple on the head. And then of course I got to add my false eye. I am a sucker for those false eyes on these shad patterns. And this little guy's going to have one on each side. Right there behind the gill plate and just above center. Okay, my UV light went out on me, so I'm stuck using 5-minute epoxy. I used to have some KBS, but I'm out.
What are you doing?
What are you doing? Trying to hit my spin jig. There's a close-up of it. All finished up. Ready for a little test at the lake. See if the fish like it as much as I do. It really swam good. So I'm excited. Can't wait to get it out there and give it the once over. Got one made up with a gold spoon, and got one with a gold. I don't know what happened, but it got all rough, but it kind of looks cool. I don't know what that's about, but I got a gold blade on it too. Got one with a chartreuse blade on it. I think that'll be cool. It's a little bitty guy. I mean, look at that. I mean, that's about as wide as my thumb, you know, maybe a little bit wider. So,
Oh yeah. Man, that looks good. You're gonna get bit. Ooh, look at that wake. Ooh. Ooh. Ooh, look at that wake. Ooh. Ooh. Okay, we're going to try the fatling on a double buzz blade. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, nice. Oh yeah. Yeah, baby. Hitting the double buzz fatling. Come on. Get over here. Yeah. That's a nice one for this creek. I think I'll take him over here to the shore and land him. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm down there rooting around trying to shake that bad boy out. Yeah. Oh yeah. Come here, baby. Come here. Yeah. Nice. That's a nice fish for this little creek. Stick him back in the water. See you later.